Welcome back to the Dershow. Are we seeing the end of Lawfare with the resignation of Jack Smith, who should have been fired and would have been fired, but he, took the preemptive step of resigning before the inauguration so as to avoid being fired. Some of the things he did, some of the cases he brought, showed such bad judgment. Again, he violated the biblical principle of do not judge people based on their faces, do not recognize faces. These were all cases which never would have been brought against another person if that person's name were not Donald Trump. I'm not saying that the same thing isn't true of Hunter Biden, although Hunter Biden's crimes were clear, crystal clear, but they may not have been brought if it wasn't the son of the president. But what Jack Smith did was not as bad as what Alvin Bragg did. I mean, we had a plausible case in the classified documents, but of course, he also had a plausible case of classified documents against President Biden. But he didn't bring that one. He brought the one against Trump, and a courageous judge who I admire basically has thrown it out. Are we seeing the end of lawfare? No, because people are still going around saying that Donald Trump is a convicted felon. He's not a convicted felon. He's a convicted non-felon. He was convicted by a jury, not of his peers, but in a district which voted 85% against him, of something that nobody can tell me is a crime. I'd love to just talk to Bragg one day and say, by the way, Mr. District Attorney, describe the crime that you claim he was convicted of. Describe the felony. I don't think he could do it. And if he did it, everybody would laugh because it's so absurd and so preposterous. By the way, last week, which was primarily an all Trump week, we got 420 views on just that week. Broke my record. Certainly it's probably now among the most watched political podcasts of this kind, without any production, one producer, my son, and no technology to speak of. We're doing it, from my home. I'm looking out at the Atlantic Ocean right now, a beautiful day in Miami Beach, Florida. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to experience it. I've been in all day working, finishing up my 57th book, which I hope will be out well before the end of the year. It's called Palestinianism, the newest danger to democracy. And I'll maybe talk about it on a future show. So today we're going to do a combination of Trump talk and Jew talk, because I'm talking about Trump and Israel. And just about an hour or so ago, President Biden got on television and gave I thought, a pretty good speech on his legacy in foreign policy. And of course, he's going to take credit if it turns out there is a deal on Gaza. And he deserves some credit, obviously, and so does Blinken deserve some credit. They worked very hard on it. But I have to tell you, and I don't think anybody would deny this, I don't think Biden would deny this, that but for Trump's election, Hamas would never have come close to accepting a deal. I think it was Trump's very, very strong statement: if you don't release the hostages by the time I'm inaugurated, they'll be held to pay. Now, whether held to pay means that the American government will do anything, the American military will do anything, or will simply not stop Israel from doing what it wants to do, and that is making it sure that forever and ever and ever, Hamas will never rule in the Gaza Strip. I myself think that everybody's looking at the wrong target when they go after just Hamas or just Hezbollah or just the Houthis. The head of the octopus is obviously in Tehran. And they say they're not afraid. We're not going to back down. But of course they're afraid, and of course they're going to back down. And if I were Trump, and if he asks my advice, I will tell him this, that he should tell Iran, look, we want to settle this thing without military force, but one thing is clear, you will never, ever, ever be able to develop a nuclear arsenal. It's just not going to happen. So you have two choices. You have 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. I leave the details to the national security advisor and to obviously the president. You have a certain amount of days to dismantle your nuclear weapons program. And don't tell us you don't have a nuclear weapons program. You know, Israel stole all your secrets and discovered that you were lying to everybody. And of course, Obama believed you, or said he believed you. When you said, "Oh, you've given up your nuclear weapons program. It's just for civilian use." You have so much oil. You don't need, obviously, nuclear energy and you're not environmentalists. So stop talking about that. Obviously, you're developing a nuclear arsenal, and your former president threatened to use it. He said, if we develop a nuclear bomb and drop it on Tel Aviv, Israel's a one-bomb state, and it would be over. There would be no more Israel. Israel would retaliate by killing people in Tehran, but it would be worth it because it would be the end of the Zionist state. No, Israel will not allow Iran to develop a nuclear arsenal. It will prevent it by itself at great cost and not so efficiently, because remember, the United States has bunker busting bombs and Israel does not. So Israel could not literally destroy all of the nuclear weaponry that's in preparation deep, deep, deep beneath mountains. The United States could do it. I think that's what Donald Trump should threaten. But of course, Donald Trump, unlike President Obama, carries through with the threats. And if he says that I give you 90 days to dismantle your nuclear program, or we will dismantle it for you, he will carry through. Unlike Obama, who said, to Syria, to Assad, if you send and use chemical weapons, biological weapons, any kinds of mass destruction weapons on your own citizens, that will be a red line. Well, they crossed the red line. And Obama said, well, never mind. I didn't really mean it. Trump doesn't talk like that and doesn't do that. And that's why I think that's why Iran would actually comply. It would cheat. Of course it would cheat, but it would take some steps and it would allow inspectors to come in and it would do a few things, but it would cheat. But even a cheating Iran that is in the process of publicly dismantling its nuclear arsenal is better than one that is basically just openly developing nuclear weapons. Who knows how close they are? There are two issues. One, how close they are to having enough, centrifuges and all of that, the technical material to manufacture half a dozen nuclear bombs. And then second, do they have a delivery system? Now, even the Iran deal, which was terrible, one of the reasons it was terrible is it didn't prevent Iran from working full time on developing a delivery system. And that's the most crucial part of any nuclear program, being able to deliver a workable nuclear weapon that could fly, evade Israeli defenses, and explode in the middle of Tel Aviv, killing 3 or 4 million innocent people. Iran would do it in a heartbeat. They don't care. They don't care. First of all, the UN wouldn't even condemn them, probably would praise them. And the International Criminal Court wouldn't indict them. And the International Court of Justice wouldn't do anything either. So it realizes it could get away with it. As you know, Israel has been condemned more than all the other nations of the world combined, and probably more than double all the other nations in the world combined for defending itself. And by the way, this is before Gaza. In any given year, Israel is condemned more than all the other countries in the world combined by the United Nations, and I think that's true of other international organizations as well. So Israel can't count on the support of the UN, and Iran can. Therefore, Iran is not deterred by the threat of international law, the ICC, or anything like that. And so the only threat that anybody on the other side listens to is the threat of kinetic warfare, the threat that we will send in our superior army, or Israel will send in its superior army. Israel has shown its ability over the last year and a quarter. It has basically destroyed the leadership of Hamas, the leadership of Hezbollah, the air defenses of Iran, and some of the capacity of the Houthis. It hasn't really done the job yet on the Houthis, but Israel today is the strongest military in the Middle East, but still one bomb. That's all you need. It's a tiny little country. It's the size of New Jersey. People find that hard to believe. It's the size of New Jersey. I remember having a conversation with President Trump during his last presidency about the Golan Heights, and how it's essentially a battleship. When the Golan Heights were under the control of the Syrians, they could just fire down at Israeli kibbutzim, at Israeli homes, at Israeli civilians from a high point, and Israel had a hard time firing back. And it could also invade from the high point and catch Israel off guard. And I think that's the reason that President Trump allowed Israel, recognized Israel's annexation of its part of the Golan Heights, the part that it captured from Syria, when Syria invaded it illegally, unlawfully in 1967. And so, you have to recognize the realities. Israel, tiny, tiny, tiny. It has, its growing population. This growing population includes enormously growing population of Arab Israelis. Also, Gaza. They claim genocide. Gaza has grown to 10 times its size since Israel was accused of what a terrible genocide when you allow a country to multiply so exponentially its population. Obviously, Israel has no interest in killing the civilian population of Gaza. It has a great interest in killing Hamas leaders and Hamas terrorists and Hamas supporters, including children. Yes, including children. You're 14 years old and you're recruited by Hamas and you're firing rockets. You're a legitimate target. I don't care how many tears are shed about you if you're 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. They still count them as children. They count them as children, even though they're firing rockets and planting explosives and murdering people. Yeah, even if you're a woman. If you're a woman and you're allowing your home to be used to fire rockets, or you're an imam and you're allowing your mosque to be used, you're a target. You're an appropriate target, and Israel should kill you. That's what laws of war are all about, distinguishing between combatants and non-combatants, not between children and adults. You can be a child and a combatant. You can be a woman and a combatant. So will Trump succeed where Biden and others have failed? Biden claims a lot of credit for what has happened. And, if there is a peace, he'll deserve part of that credit. And hopefully the peace will progress and move toward maybe some kind of agreement between Israel and Saudi Arabia. That would really be a game changer. The Saudis have said they won't recognize Israel or in any way cooperate with Israel unless Israel establishes a Palestinian state. Duh. They tried that. They offered a Palestinian state in 1937 in the Peel Commission, even before there was an Israel. They offered it in 1948 when the United Nations partitioned the mandate into a Jewish state and an Arab state. The Jews said yes, the Palestinians said no. They offered the Palestinians a state in 1967. They offered to return the entire West Bank in exchange for peace. The Palestinians and the Arabs went to Khartoum and issued their three famous no's: no negotiation, no recognition, no peace. Then they offered a state in 2000, 2001, 2007. They offered the Gaza complete independence in 2005. So don't say to Israel, allow the Palestinians to establish a state. They've done it over and over and over and over again. And the Palestinian leadership doesn't know how to take yes for an answer. And the reason is very simple. Bill Clinton stated it in a speech he made during the recent campaign in Michigan. He said that essentially all Hamas wants to do is kill Jews. They don't want a state of their own. And the leader of the Palestinians back in 1943 said in a meeting with Adolf Hitler, they were buddies. He spent the war years in Berlin being protected and being buddy with Der Fuhrer. He said basically to the Fuhrer, we don't care about a Palestinian state. We're not even Palestinians. We're just Arabs. We want to be part of Syria and Iraq. All we want to do is kill the Jews. All we want to do is destroy any Jewish presence there. That's the leader of the Palestinians talking. That's Palestinianism. That's the beginning of Palestinianism, which is going to be my newest book about the evils of Palestinianism. I don't mean by Palestinianism support for Palestinian people or support for a state. I mean this obsessive focus only on the quote rights of the Palestinians and the wrongs of Israel, which so defies historical truth. But let's get back to Donald Trump. So what Donald Trump going to do? He has, of course, sent his emissaries to the negotiations. This is unusual. It didn't happen previously. It didn't happen with Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan. There may have been some secret negotiations, but here we have President Trump's official representative to the Middle East joining the negotiations and participating in the negotiations. And for obvious reasons, of course, if there is a deal, and even if it commences while Biden is president, it's not going to be completed until when Trump was president, because it comes in various phases. The deal that's on the table today would be 30 some odd living hostages returned, including the 7 Americans who are hostages. They would be returned. Israel would give thousands of murderers back, which is always horrible and unfair and helped result in the October 7th massacres, because Sinwar was one of those traded for one soldier. But Israel will give up lots and lots and lots of people. The numbers vary between 2,000 and 3,000 in exchange for 36. Who knows if there are any more hostages alive? We don't know. And also, as a result of that, Israel would agree to a ceasefire for a period of time, more than a month, less than 3 months. The numbers aren't yet completely public, or if they've been completely agreed upon, but something like 40, 45 days. We don't know. And during that period of time, there would be efforts to achieve the second phase, which would be the release of all the hostages, most of whom at that point would probably not be alive. We know Hamas has already said, we don't know where some of the hostages are. They're under the control of Islamic Jihad or under the control of other terrorist groups. They've been sold, they've been traded, they've been enslaved, basically. We don't know where they all are. We don't know how many are dead and how many are alive, but we're going to give you back the 36 that we know are alive, which comprised mostly of women and babies and the elderly and the invalid and the sick. And it would be a beginning. It would be a beginning. If it happens, Donald Trump would be 100% responsible for it. Is he going to get the Nobel Peace Prize? No. Donald Trump will never get the Nobel Peace Prize. Will any Republican ever get the Nobel Peace Prize? Will any conservative ever get the Nobel Peace Prize? Will anybody really care anymore who gets the Nobel Peace Prize? Some of the people who have gotten it have proved to be the most disgusting people in the world, including Yasser Arafat and others. So it's a worthless prize. It's worth $1 million, so it's not worthless, and you get a gold medal like an Olympic medal. But they have cheapened it by giving it to so many really bad people. Jimmy Carter got it. He probably deserved it marginally. I mean, he did help make peace between Egypt and Israel, but then he helped destroy peace by calling Israel an apartheid state and going after Israel and being buddy-buddy with every Arab terrorist leader, every Arab tyrant. He's never met an Arab tyrant he didn't like, or an Israeli person who was a peacemaker who he did like, a leader. So I'm not a big fan, as you know, of Jimmy Carter. I'm not a big fan of the Nobel Peace Prize. And I'm not a big fan of some of the people who've gotten the Nobel Peace Prize. But I am a big fan of Donald Trump if he manages to bring about a peace in the Middle East that no previous president has managed to achieve. I think that Bill Clinton, I've spoken to him about this, his biggest disappointment, not second biggest, his biggest disappointment is that Yasser Arafat told him he would accept the two-state solution peace agreement that they had arrived at, which would have given the Palestinians 96% of the West Bank 4% plus of what is now Israel and the Afula Triangle, giving them more than 100% of the land they have now, a capital in Jerusalem, control over the two or three parts of the old city of Jerusalem, and many other things, a fortune of money to go in and build the country. And Arafat couldn't do it. He didn't have the courage. He was afraid he would be shot. He was afraid that would happen to Sadat would happen to him. And it might have happened because, the Palestinian radicals and extremists don't want peace. And as Clinton said, they don't want peace. They just want to kill Jews and Israelis. And so it was a very, very difficult task for Clinton. I wish he had done it. He deserved it. He worked very hard on it. And he didn't get it. Maybe Trump will get it, and we hope so. By tomorrow, the next day, when we have our shows, we will probably know more about whether there are really any prospects for return of the hostages, and if not, what President Trump means when he says there'll be hell to pay. There should be hell to pay, but that hell should be directed as much at Iran. You can cut off the legs of an octopus, the arms of the octopus, they grow back. They go right back. You got to get the head, and the head is sitting in Tehran. The chief ayatollahs and the assistant ayatollahs and the Revolutionary Guard, those are the people who are calling the shots for Hezbollah, for Hamas, and for the Houthis, and for other groups as well. And so let's hope that Donald Trump can accomplish what other presidents, including President Biden, have not been able to accomplish. But I will give Biden credit. If it happens, the credit gets shared shared in this way. A lot of the hard work will have been done by Biden, but it would never have come off without the threats and the personality of Donald Trump. When Donald Trump speaks about things like this, people listen more than when Biden speaks. And so that's an important quality. I think a lot of people voted for him for president because of that quality. And let's see if he can pull it off. And I will be the first to congratulate him if that does happen. Okay, let's look at some questions. So the first one quotes me as saying, "The right are turning liberal into a dirty word, question mark. Au contraire, Dersh, it is the left who is using that word to give an unearned veneer of respectability to their foul hash of Marxism and autocracy. Love the show, et cetera, et cetera." You're right about that. It is the left that is making liberalism into a bad word, but of course it's the right that is calling liberals names. I am a liberal, a traditional classical liberal. I believe in liberal values, free speech, small government, the very things that conservatives believe in. Liberals and conservatives are much closer to each other than either are to the extremes of their side. And that's clear. It's another one like this. "Thank you, sir. I pray many times not to be deceived. You really educated me that liberalism is not a bad word. Libertarian is not a bad word." And I agree. I'm a libertarian. I'm a liberal. I have some conservative values in the economy and foreign policy and some other things, but I don't need a label. I know who I am. I know what I stand for. And I think my viewers and listeners know what I stand for. I'm pretty hard to pigeonhole. Somebody liked the quote that I did on the show the other day. Having a good enemies list is really important. I believe that very, very strongly. And boy, do I have a good enemies list. Half of Martha's Vineyard, Noam Chomsky, many Hollywood leftists. Oh, by the way, the Hollywood leftists, today are one of them, this crazy organization called Code Pink, radical, many of them communist, anarchist women are saying that the Jews are to blame for the fires in California. They were to blame for the poisoning of the wells and black disease. And now this hard left group wants to blame the Jews for the fires in California. Go ahead. We know what that means. And One of my favorites is the head of the DEI of Los Angeles Fire Department said, when we send a fire person to the house, not a fireman, a fire person to the house, the homeowner wants that person to look like him. No, they don't. They want him to put the fire out. They don't want him to look like, I certainly don't want him to look like me. I want him to be young and strong and powerful and able to, do the right thing and put out the fire, just like when I get on a plane. I'm not looking for somebody who looks like me. I don't care if his name is Goldberg or Bernstein or O'Brien. I want him to be able to fly a plane and make sure that what happened to the plane the other day doesn't happen to the plane I'm on. So, meritocracy, that's what's the key to the greatness of America. And it's the key to preventing the spreading of wildfires in California as well. DEA is not going to do it. I have to tell you that. All right, this is a variation of the liberal thing. Many conservatives are going, yay, Dershowitz is one of us. That's a mistake. He is not one of us, but he is important. He is a member of the other side, but one that values truth over ideology. For that, we conservatives should be grateful for his fairness. However, we should not mistake him for one of us. Instead, we need to regard him as a member of the left. I'm not a member of the left. I'm a liberal, but let's let him say. We may need to regard him as a member of the left that we can trust to embrace the truth. We may not always agree with him, but we should trust that his goal is objective truth, something we hold or should hold supreme. You're absolutely 100% right. I am not one of you. I'm not one of anybody. I'm certainly not a Democrat anymore, but I'm not a Republican either. So let's be very, very clear about that. Okay, a couple of more good questions. Can you explain why or why not you believe DAs or judges should be elected rather than appointed? I haven't heard where you have answered that before. Let me be very clear. DAs and judges should not be elected. They should be appointed by a committee of distinguished judges, lawyers, prominent people, ministers, priests, people who appoint very important people. You don't want a judge to be looking at electoral results and wondering whether this decision or opinion will help him get reelected. Same thing is true with prosecutors. That's what's wrong with Bragg. Bragg decided not to bring these criminal charges against Trump, and then his electoral assistant said, well, wait a minute, this is New York. Maybe it'd be beneficial to you if you did bring the charges. And he did. So I don't. And Marchand is also an elected judge. Okay, this is an interesting comment on I say I refuse to call Donald Trump a convicted felon. This guy says, I consider Trump convicted in the same way Nelson Mandela and Southern blacks and Jews of the South of Jim Crow were convicted. No, I think that's right. There is a technical conviction on his record, but I won't use that term because he was not properly convicted. Now, this guy, the next letter goes too far. January 6th was no crime. It was. People who hurt other people, people who assaulted other people, they were criminals. I agree with you that going into the Capitol after being waved by the police, like one of my clients did, that's not a crime. And if it is, it's a minor technical trespassing, something probably we've all done in our lifetime. But January 6th, the people who were violent and who assaulted people, those were crimes, and they should be prosecuted. And as the vice president-elect has said, the president shouldn't pardon the people who engaged in violence. And this is the final one. So what has the great outraged Alan Dershowitz physically done about it besides flap your lips? Write my books. That's all I do. I flap my lips and I write my books. I do not physically go out and beat up people. I don't physically break into the Capitol. Sorry, those days are gone. I'm 86 years old. All I can do is fight with my pen, fight with my mouth, and fight with my brain. As long as God gives me the power to do that, I will continue to do that. But don't count on me for physical support unless it's in self-defense. See you tomorrow.